So with these as kind of a background, I wanted to look at the current financial meltdown. And here the example that where race has been brought to bear by the opponents of social progress is the blaming of the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 and its strengthening in the early 90s. And then this is supposed to have led inexorably to the total, handing out of subprime loans and the whole undermining of the financial system. And what it does is it, one, it denies that there was racism and redlining going on in the 70s, and it needed to be strengthened in the 90s. And what the main purpose, though, it seems to me, is to divert the attention away from the whole regime of deregulation, which has been in place since the early 1980s, from Ronald Reagan on, right? And this deregulation targeted affirmative action to be turned back. Labor unions were attacked, the air traffic controllers. We've seen a decline in labor. Public workers have been attacked through privatization, and that was a place where African Americans since the 1960s were often able to find employment with decent pay. And they've also deregulated finance during this period in a big way. And in particular, like in 1999, they repealed the Glass-Steagall Act, which was one of the lessons that came out of the 1930s to help keep this, the financial system stable. And in 2004, they removed all the standards for the level of what was required to make loans. So this whole regime of deregulation is what led to the situation where there was a vast increase of all these exotic forms of investment. And the profits, for example, in the financial area increased from, in the 1960s, an area of like 2% of profits were from finance. And in 2005 or 2006, it was 40% of profits came from finance. So the whole goal of pointing the finger at the Community Reinvestment Act is to blame the victim, because black people, people of color, have been hard hit by these cynical loans with very low kind of teaser loans to people, where any salesman would have known that once the rates go up, people are going to lose their homes. So the whole thing was totally cynical. And it lets the right-wing policies kind of off the hook, and it rallies white people to a program that's against their own interests. But that's just one layer, right? Because when you dig deeper below this, right, there's a deeper process going on, right? That in the 1970s, the economy, which had been humming kind of from the World War II up to 1973, found itself in stagflation and lacking places to invest and having money kind of just laying around out there. And what came of that was the farm crisis that people remember, the low interest farm loans that then came back on people, the third world debt came back on people. Then in the 80s, there was a savings and loan situation. In 1997, the Asian economic crisis, the dot-com bubble built during the late 90s as people pumped money into companies that weren't even making a profit. And then when that crashed in 2001, they tried to pull out of the recession by lowering interest rates. And then that meant people put money into real estate. And then when, like I said, in 2004, when they took away the standards for making these loans, then all the money went deeper into the subprime market. And at the same time, the banks were packaging these things, shipping them out so that the salesperson who makes the sale and the mortgage company and the bank had no accountability to whatever happened. And meanwhile, they will then use these to borrow tons of money and then use different kind of swaps, what they call swaps, insurance, and so on. And right now, there's trillions of dollars worth of all these exotic things still floating around out there off the books of the banks. And it's a colossal reckoning that we're facing. So but one way to understand the crash that we're in, right, is there's this huge bubble of paper out there that people have been making money off of paper. It's coming crashing down, and that's the way the system resets itself, so to speak, right? It's the way capitalism resets itself. You get these bubbles, then the economy crashes, and then they have to devalue all of the paper and whatnot, get down to the point where people are actually making things that have value to them. And my feeling is that we're really nowhere near the end of what's still going to be happening out there in the economy. So going back again, so here, this is a systemic crisis, it seems to me, right? And so at these big changing points in history, once again, you can see the attack on the Community Reinvestment Act as being a way to redirect attention away from the real problems behind what's going on. And then linked with that is this charge of socialism, right, which has most recently been placed on Obama. And I kind of find that a little kind of humorous myself. I'm a socialist, okay? And so when it's kind of, to me, it's like attacking someone for being a good neighbor, you know? Or, you know, how dare you show concern for the vast majority of people, or that people are suffering hardship, or that we want to help people use the government power to raise all the boats, right? Starting at the grassroots and the worst off. And history, I think, can be helpful here too, right? If we look back, 1886, there was a huge nationwide demonstrations for the 8-hour day. There was multiracial, right? And after that, the Knights of Labor made gains in the South in organizing, particularly among black people. And yet, what was raised was the specter of anarchism, and that was used as a way to smash that movement after 1886. 60 years later, right, after World War II, the gains that had been made in the South, say, for example, organizing around the Scottsboro Boys, right, or in labor unions in Birmingham, or right after the war with the tobacco workers in Winston-Salem. These gains were lumped together, and anything that had to do with racial advancement, fighting racism, or had to do with organizing labor was lumped under the heading of communism, right? Anti-communism was the banner to attack both these movements. And now here we are 60 years later. It's almost like a clock, right? 60 years later, and now it's socialism is the name that's being tagged on to what's going on. So it seems to me that what we should hope for and what we should work to achieve is, one, we don't fall for it, okay? White people, you know, and granted, we're not that many here, right? But we need to kind of see through these charges that are directed against people of color, and on the other side, folks of color hopefully will see through the charges and fight back and resist against them, right? The best hope now, as in the past, in the historical examples I've mentioned, is for an upsurge of people of color, upsurge of the freedom movements. But this time, together with a reinvigorated labor movement that also includes the undocumented workers, okay? That includes women and other people outside of the gender binary and their struggle against patriarchy, that we have a multiple rising of movements. Much has happened in the 1960s, but this time united, for example, with the labor movement. So we have a broad, powerful, multi-issue, multi-constituency, but united around the vision of a new world, one that's run by and for the vast majority, and it has room in it for all of us.